It's a good news, bad news situation.
5 years of challenges, paving a new path forward. A community sticking together.
It's about neighbors helping neighbors. It's about the power to the people, ultimately, to make their own neighborhood safe.
Making peace with unanswered questions.
There's a lot of speculation around who this individual is and certainly how he came to be in the campfire.
Now, a new and different future becoming clearer.
I feel like it's just so much better than I ever thought it would be.
Action News Now presents Recovery on the Ridge, 5 years after the campfire.
Today, campfire survivors gathered in Paradise to pay respect to those killed 5 years ago.
85 seconds of silent remembrance, 1 second for every life lost. Then, looking forward to a brighter future, the community sealed a time capsule that will mark 5 years of recovery. They'll dig it back up on the 25th anniversary of the campfire in 2043.
What I put inside of it today is this book, and this was written by 2 therapists, and it's stories of campfire survivors.
He appears so sweet, and I didn't want her to grow up in a big town where nobody knows anybody, and our neighbors right now are really sweet and they always look out for us.
It's a time of reflection, of grief, but also a time for looking forward. The catastrophic fire started with a powerful wind and a corroded hook on a century-old electrical transmission tower. The flames rapidly burned through Concow and then roared into Paradise and Magalia. It burned more than 153,000 acres.
That fire destroyed more than 18,000 homes and businesses, mostly in just the first 4 hours. And in the end, about 95% of both Paradise and Concow were destroyed. 85 people died in the fire. Now, the utility that caused it all is wrapping up work to ensure it will never happen again.
It took just one mistake, an unnoticed, worn-out metal C-hook. It snapped, dropping a high-voltage electric line, changing our community forever.
In our immediate family, there was 13 homes that we lost in our family.
We lost everything. We lost all of our. My whole family was gone.
Forrest Jones lost his house in Santa Rosa in the Tubbs fire, then moved to Paradise with the rest of his family just before the campfire, losing everything again.
And the majority are fed up. We're fed up.
Also angry about what happened, Joe Wilson, the vice president of PG&E's North Valley and Sierra region.
When it came out that PG&E equipment was the cause of the fire, I have to tell you, I wanted to quit. I felt sick. And I wrestled with whether or not I wanted to continue to work for PG&E. And I talked to a mentor, and he said, why don't you be a part of the solution? Why don't you help lead the rebuild effort?
And that's what Wilson did. It included a promise to put 207 miles of power lines underground through Paradise and Magalia. Every year, more line goes down. The first year, 30 miles, 40 the second, then 50 to 60.
And now this year we're projected to do 70 miles.
70 miles.
And
by the end of 2023.
By the end of 2023.
PG&E says the $1.5 billion safety plan almost cuts all wildfire risk.
Here within the town, every service is going underground.
Oh, wow.
So this is going to get us just about 100% risk reduction.
Plus, with lines underground, it means a future without public safety power shutoffs in Paradise and Magalia, and no need for special quick shutoff lines. Work on many of the main routes is mostly complete, but PG&E still has a ways to go when it comes to a lot of the smaller neighborhoods.
What we're seeing here on the ground, is this where there already is power lines put down?
Correct.
Basically?
So this is a temporary patch.
A lot of those trenches also hold gas and communication lines.
So where did the money come from? The $1.5 billion, whose pocket did that come out of?
So we're still working on how we're going to get it financed.
Okay.
We know that customer rates are high.
Wilson says no rate hikes went to pay for the burn scar work. It comes out of what would have gone to shareholders. And despite billions in earnings, he says PG&E hasn't really been profitable for 6 years.
PG&E hasn't paid a dividend since October of 2017. So for 6 years, shareholders haven't gotten a return on their money because we've been rolling that back into the business.
Crews usually do about 200 to 300 feet per day, or a quarter mile a week. The work sometimes causing big problems on the road.
I like the idea of having everything underground, but I don't see everything underground, and it's been 6 years.
You will continue to see overhead lines along Skyway. These ones are transmission lines that feed the substation, which brings power to the underground lines. The job should be done by the end of 2025. One Paradise business owner says it's worth the wait.
It's a short-term interruption for a long-term benefit. And yes, it was frustrating to have our street torn up and trying to run a business. However, our street is done now, and it's wonderful. The fire was so devastating. Until you go through something like that, there's no way to understand. But once you've been through it, you can see the benefit.
Each day we just saw progression, and that was exciting to see the town, all the new roads coming in and the underground, not just with the power, but also all of the internet and all of the things that were being done to just rebuild the town to kind of bring it up to today's modern standards.
Others say nothing will ever be enough.
Ours was literally actually somebody's fault and proven to be somebody's fault. And they still, I don't think they paid for it. I don't think they paid for it.
That loss, that trauma, there's nothing we can do to make it right. So we have to focus on what can we do to make it safe.
PG&E wants to put another 2,000 miles of power lines underground across high fire risk areas, but state regulators say it would take too long and cost $5.9 billion.
Before rebuilding could begin, crews removed more than 3.6 million tons of debris. That's equivalent to 4 Golden Gate bridges. Debris removal crews traveled the equivalent of more than 28 million road miles. That's 59 round trips to the moon from December 2018 through November 2019.
Wear and tear on the roads meant some serious rehab, and road restructuring had to include more space for people to get out in a hurry. Action News Now reporter Chloe Curtis shows us where evacuation upgrades and road repairs stand today.
Immediately after the fire, we realized that the recovery was going to be massive and the scope of it was going to take decades.
Decades to fix the roads, important to the recovery of the ridge.
Identified 39 recovery projects that are in our long-term recovery plan. And one of those, actually quite a few of them, deal with our roadways, but one certainly was restoring our roadways and fixing them after all of the damage that happened through the campfire and debris removal.
This is what a lot of roads still look like in Paradise, potholes and cracks as work continues. But this is what they hope the roads will look like once the job is completed. For 5 years, almost 5 years, is this more or less than you thought you'd be able to accomplish in that time?
Yeah, I think we both look at each other with the same answer, that it's better than anyone could have ever expected.
When it comes to the paving part of restoring the roads, Maddox says about 20 to 25% of the work is done, and more projects still in the pipeline. You're looking at Circlewood Drive. It's the first FEMA-funded road rehab project in town. By the time work is completed, every public road in Paradise will be paved. The town has secured about $200 million for projects, some that haven't even started yet. Work that'll largely focus on road work and evacuation routes. The traffic jams and delays still fresh in many people's minds from the day of the fire.
We had drills before the fire with contraflow or one-way evacuation, but we learned a lot from the campfire through that experience that we have now added into our training and our preparedness.
We're looking at roads like Pence Road for a brand new road widening to include a center two-way left turn lane and a bike path that can be used in evacuation. We're looking at widening portions of Skyway between Billy and Wagstaff.
I feel absolutely called to do this work.
The work here on the ridge is more than just a job. Curtis and Maddox are campfire survivors and feel a calling to help their community.
Certainly, I was affected by the fire. Luckily, my home's survived, but I really felt that that was my duty at that point to really put my time and my efforts into this job because there is nothing more rewarding I could imagine doing. I wouldn't imagine being anywhere else.
Being personally affected by it helps us provide empathy and understanding to the community who's going through it alongside us.
As for what's next,
at the end of it, in 2026, Paradise could have some of the best roads, if not the best roads in California.
Maddox says the town is looking to deliver about 25 miles of paving per year over the next 3 years. In Paradise, Chloe Curtis, Action News Now, coverage you can count on.
The town of Paradise does have an interactive map detailing when and where road work will happen in the years ahead.
You can access it on our website under News and then News Links. Now, across the burn scar, Butte County has completed about 16 miles of road repair. That's from Skyway in Chico up to Paradise, plus 6 miles along Pence Road from Paradise down to Highway 70, and about a mile along New Skyway from Paradise up to Coodalink Road. Now, these completed projects make up 45% of the needed work.
5 years later, there's still one unsolved mystery after the Camp Fire. I'm Kelly Som. Coming up, I'll tell you about the ongoing effort to identify the last Camp Fire victim.
There remains one unsolved mystery of the Camp Fire.
Action News Now anchor Kelly Som looked into the ongoing effort to put a name to the very last Camp Fire victim. So Kelly, what did you find out about this investigation 5 years later?
Well, you may remember there were 85 crosses put up to remember all 85 victims of the Camp Fire, and only 84 of those crosses have a name. That's because one of those victims still has not been identified. Butte County Sheriff Corey Honey said he's hopeful a new round of testing will help solve the mystery. When you drive through Concow and talk to the people here, everyone has a story about the day the Camp Fire tore through these hills.
It was raining fire. It was like embers were like snowflakes.
Walked outside and seen the smoke.
Most vivid memory was waking up in the morning, looking out and seeing it all yellow and saying, what's going on?
By 7:30 that morning, the Camp Fire was burning to the southwest and traveling fast, destroying almost everything in its path, including one particular home right here near Schweihart Lane and Concow Road.
This photo shows all that was left of that home. Among the ashes, investigators discovered the remains of a mystery man who's still unidentified. He has no known connection to the home or the homeowner.
This is that one case where it's out there.
Butte County Sheriff Corey Honey said scientists extracted limited information from the man's DNA and dental work.
Do you have any type of description of maybe height, weight, maybe ancestry, what type of information?
The best that we have, and again it's based on analysis of very small bone fragments done by forensic anthropologists, is that they believe that the individual was a larger, older adult, male, and had dental work.
This is the groundbreaking tool investigators use to identify most of the Camp Fire victims so quickly. The Andy Rapid DNA machine quickly matches the DNA of recovered remains to relatives.
Take what's called a buccal swab by rubbing the inside of a person's cheek. Within an hour and a half or so, you can have a DNA profile.
Honey said the Camp Fire was the first major wildfire to use the Andy Rapid DNA technology. Now it's helping identify victims of other major disasters, like the wildfire in Maui.
We did send one of our coroner's investigators to Maui to help identify the remains using an Andy Rapid DNA machine. I am glad that our experience can be paid forward in terms of helping somebody out.
But in the case of the mystery man on Schweihart Lane, no family has come forward to provide DNA, and there's no match in the law enforcement DNA databases.
As an investigator, given the information you have, do you have a working theory about who this person was or what type of person this could be?
Given the fact that nobody locally has come forward and said, hey, we're missing a loved one, it leads me to believe that the individual was probably from out of the area, perhaps even out of the country, and maybe His family or friends weren't necessarily aware of what his location was, which is why they haven't reached out to us.
Pony isn't giving up. A private lab is now trying to match the DNA to the same genealogical database that solved the case of the Golden State Killer.
We're hopeful that somebody has gone online, started looking into their history, perhaps uploaded their DNA into one of these databases, and to determine what their ancestry is. And hopefully that will give us a clue as to who this individual is.
And Alan, Sheriff Honey said he's confident that this case will eventually be solved, and we're going to stay on top of it.
Good. I mean, it's been 5 years, but I like his confidence. And you mentioned, and we heard the sheriff mention, that he sent someone to Maui for help with victim identification. How else has Butte County been able to use the knowledge gained from the campfire to help others?
So Butte County was able to purchase one of those Andy rapid DNA testing machines at a reduced price, and they're using it to process DNA on all sorts of other crimes. So because they don't have to send the DNA off to a crime lab, they're able to keep it local and process those DNA results much more quickly.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Kelly.
Before the campfire, about 3,400 students went to Paradise Unified Schools alone. Now there are a little over 1,600 students going to schools, and that's about 49% of the pre-fire size. And Action News Now reporter Margot Rowe shows us what's changed.
Out of the 11 schools within the Paradise Unified School District, Cedarwood Elementary School up here in Magalia was the only one that wasn't damaged or destroyed in the campfire. The fire caused enrollment numbers to drop, leaving gaps in education.
Now, 5 years later, the school district is entering an era of hope, growth, and resiliency.
In fact, we're really happy with the enrollment we're seeing.
Paradise Unified Superintendent Tom Taylor says there are 1,606 students enrolled, down from the 3,400 pre-fire, but more than what the district projected.
You know, our community is drawing a younger group of people now, which increases the enrollment. They do like the new schools, and they're very confident in our school system. We've also done more marketing than I've ever seen over the last probably 15 years prior to after the fire.
Staff says there are still struggles when it comes to navigating school from a mental health and an academic standpoint, but they're making it work.
We have had some of the most comprehensive services, the psychological services, counseling that, for teachers and for students that I have ever seen at any school I've worked at.
Our community was surviving, and there wasn't a lot of learning going on right then besides how to survive and those skills that we needed to survive. And then we went to striving, and we were starting to get our momentum, and now we're moving into this thriving era.
The majority of students that I spoke with tell me the biggest struggle they faced after the fire:
moving around from school to school, many starting off in Chico or in Durham.
Well, I mean, it was hard because I went to a bunch of different schools, so it was hard to catch up on all the work and stuff.
Honestly, 7th grade, I think I probably lost that whole year of education.
Education has been affected a lot since the campfire. In a lot of ways, socially, mentally, physically.
Despite their struggles, students think the school district has prepared them for what comes next.
So I do have gaps, and we all do, but our teachers are really, really helpful and accommodating.
I feel like the school district is very, very successful. I feel like this is a very successful school. A lot of people can learn a lot from here, and it gives you a second chance.
Some students have even changed their goals because of what happened on November 8th, 2018. Annie here wants to pursue filmmaking and wants to tell stories about human struggles and resiliency. Devin is looking at a career in wildfire firefighting.
What was on my mind for a while was dropping out and just kind of, working a store job. But I want to graduate. I want to work for that kind of field.
Taylor says about 70% of the schools have been modernized or rebuilt since the fire. He wants to make it 100% in the next few years, including possibly rebuilding Paradise Elementary.
We don't know what the name will be when it comes back, but one of our big projects right now and one of the focuses is what do we do with the Paradise Elementary. And we're talking, by the time you get plans and everything done, you really wouldn't even break ground for probably a year and a half, and then construction another year and a half.
The district also plans to add a career technical education school, possibly here at the Paradise High campus. not only for students looking to join the workforce, but for adults up here on the ridge as well. In Paradise, I'm Margot Rowe for Action News Now. Coverage you can count on.
Rebuild Paradise collected handprints on tiles from 2,500 students across the burn scar.
They hope to build a mural at Paradise Community Park with those tiles.
It lasted 17 days, but one of the most destructive fires in U.S. history and the most destructive fire in California history did a lot of its damage just in the first couple of hours. I'm tracking what drove the campfire to spread so rapidly, coming up right after this.
I was at the Paradise Ice Rink reporting live the morning that the fire started. It was cold out there and it was windy.
And of course, Court Klopping was here in the studio tracking the conditions as it all happened. So Court, what exactly created that perfect storm?
Well, there were a lot of elements at play here. One, you have to take into account that we were having an extremely dry season leading up to this point. And then what we ended up seeing was something that's not too uncommon in the fall, but following that dry season, that certainly played a big role in what ended up happening. And what happened that day was a lot of destruction. The campfire started November 8th, 2018, just before 6:30 a.m. in the town of Polga. It ended up burning more than 153,000 acres across Butte County, extending all the way to the northern edge of Lake Orville and as far east, or west that is Highway 32, just to the east of Chico, almost making its way into Chico city limits. But it wasn't the 17 days that this fire burned that caused the majority of the damage. It was just the first couple of hours. And I want to show you the timeline of when these fires were reported and how quickly this fire did spread. You could see this fire started in Polga just before 6:30 a.m. That's when that first ignition was reported. Next hour or so, we saw spot fires started to be reported to the south and west of Polga. By 7:30 a.m., less than an hour from the initial call, we had a fire reported in Concow. This could have been caused, in fact, likely was caused by burning embers being blown towards Polga, nearly 6 miles away from where the fire started in Polga to Concow. Then by 7:45 a.m., a fire reported in Paradise, 10 miles almost away from the start of the fire in Polga, 9.4 miles away from where the fire started. In the next half an hour after that, fires started really popping up and being reported on the east side of Paradise and then within the city limits of Paradise. By 8:30 a.m., fires intensifying along the east side of Paradise and heading into the interior town of Paradise. And then the next hour after that, fires continually popping up, being reported, and then spreading down in towards the lower Paradise and Skyway locations, where we did see a lot of problems for people trying to get out of town during that time frame. So this is why this was such a devastating first day of fire, or at least that shows you the progression, how quickly that fire moved that morning. Now on to the why. During that same time frame, we had an inside slider event happening. High pressure off the coast acting as a blocking pattern, drying us out and leaving us a little warmer than average. Now, this is a fairly common occurrence during the fall season across Northern California. During that same time, we had a trough of low pressure riding over the top of that ridge and then sliding south. These two areas, the low pressure to our east and high pressure to our west, interacting with each other to tighten up those pressure gradients, leading to gusty north winds in the valley and winds out of the northeast across the foothills and northern Sierra. And during that time frame, what happened? We had all of that wind rushing out of the south or northeast to southwest through the Feather River Canyon. A lot of that air being diverted and funneled into the canyon during that time frame, getting those gusts to become even stronger during that time. 45 to 80 mile an hour gusts through the Feather River Canyon that morning. And what happens there is then those strong gusts have to go somewhere, and they ended up offshooting into other canyons, going mainly to the west out of the Feather River Canyon, and this is what diverted those burning embers to spread so quickly and start new spot fires ahead of the main fire impacting areas along Highway 70 in the Feather River Canyon, through Concow, and then towards the town of Paradise. Strong winds rushed through those canyons, causing the fire to spread rapidly and causing so much damage just in the first couple of hours that the campfire was burning. Now, Haley, as you'd mentioned before, we were both working on that fateful morning and the fire broke out, and I will never forget how the team came together so quickly and stayed vigilant, covering the impacts in real time in the weeks that followed.
Yeah, the team here, and really a silver lining of this whole experience, not just our team, but just seeing our entire community coming together to get through all of this and get help to those who needed it most.
Well, survivors are rebuilding under new fire-wise standards, but will insurance companies recognize that?
We know we're much safer. There are areas that have much lower insurance premiums, and their communities are a much higher risk for a fire.
The future of how costly coverage could become straight ahead. About 3,000 homes are fully rebuilt across the entire burn scar. That's 21%, 57 in Concow, 270 in Magalia.
And about 900 homes are under construction and 400 waiting to break ground. Now the question is, will people be able to get insurance?
I started hearing about the insurance issue with some real estate friends, and they said it's not if your insurance will go up, it's when.
The campfire brought Jenny Goodlin back to Paradise, her hometown. Her family picked a burned out lot and built their dream home. But as insurance companies leave the state, Goodlin doesn't want to just wait for the hammer to drop.
I was like, isn't there something we can do now? Like, I gotta help my neighbor now whose insurance policy went to $14,000 a year.
She realized Paradise's post-campfire rebuilding ordinances require new homes be wildfire prepared, under standards tested out by the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. That meant most areas already meet the requirements to get the FireWise neighborhood insurance discount.
We are required to have specific siding on our home.
Okay.
So that also corresponds with what FireWise recommends. We have to have a certain type of roof. These vents here, they automatically close if they get too hot.
Oh, wow.
A lot of different things factor in. Living next to a windy canyon can elevate fire risk, but when it comes to being fire-wise, living next to a well-maintained park can score you points. Goodlin paved the way for the first official fire-wise community in Paradise, and it's already paying off.
Some of my neighbors have received checks from their insurance company reimbursing them for their premiums because of the discount ratio.
Others are working to get the same designation.
Growing up in Paradise, we evacuated, I don't know, probably 10 times in my life growing up, just because there was some kind of warning. And so it'd be like, well, you just throw the photo albums in the car and drive away for an hour and then always come back.
Right.
So defensible space didn't really mean anything to us either. I have just this huge peace of mind now that I never had growing up in Paradise.
Being FireWise helps, but doesn't solve the insurance problem.
I have not gotten my update, and I hear that it's going to be like 300% higher than what it is right now.
The Goodlins used farmers, which over summer joined Allstate and State Farm in limiting homeowner policies in California.
They went from $2,500 to about $11,500. Oh, wow. And when we are searching to find insurance, no one really is writing policies here except for California Fair Plan.
That's the state backup plan. But in September, the insurance commissioner announced the California Sustainable Insurance Strategy to keep people off the Fair Plan and keep insurance companies around. That proposal includes new rules for reviewing climate catastrophe models, which recognize the benefits of wildfire safety and prevention actions, like what we see in Paradise.
Does it seem to you like insurance companies that you deal with give that sort of thing any consideration?
Not yet. Not yet.
Do you think that they will?
I think they will when we get more competition in the area.
In order for that to happen, we're going to have to see everybody's rates go up across the state first.
Yes. I think that the Department of Insurance has to do a more diligent job in allowing the rate increases to come in a timely manner to bring companies back in to start the feeding frenzy.
Many in Paradise are confident insurance companies will change their standards.
To recognize the real safety that Paradise, the town of Paradise, is in, just growing back and building back so much safer and harder. Our warning system that we have, all of our infrastructure going under the ground, and then almost every house is built to these new fire safe codes.
The state plan would also give Fair Plan policyholders who comply with new fire safe regulations first priority to get back to normal insurance. People like Goodlin.
I actually am hopeful that our situation will improve here because of what we're doing, the measures we're taking, and honestly, any hurdle our community has had, we've had many since the fire, we just haven't let it stop us.
Governor Newsom issued an executive order urging prompt regulatory action in support of the California Sustainable Insurance Strategy, but still no action from lawmakers.
Reinventing the future. Some Paradise natives are forging a new path and building for the next generation.
We needed to build back with the idea that what we were building was sustainable and was going to be here for long after we were gone.
When we come back. Five years after the Camp Fire, a new community is steadily growing, but things do look different on the ridge.
Yeah, you're once again going to see a sign along Skyway welcoming you to Paradise. The Antique Mall still standing with some new storefronts to offer. And at Elliott Road, Terry Ash Park still serves as a hub for the community to come together.
Well, I went into Paradise 4 days after the Camp Fire because so many thousands of you were dependent on us in that first week to show you what was going on and what was left in the community. I will never forget the emotions I personally felt when I spent that Sunday afternoon in Paradise.
5 years after the Camp Fire, reminders of what once was remain. But drive down almost any street or road and signs that Paradise is returning are everywhere with newly rebuilt homes and businesses. A stark difference compared with what I saw when I drove into Paradise for the first time after the Camp Fire on Sunday, November 11th, 2018.
Wow, here I am getting into town and here it is. I'm seeing standing chimneys of homes, collapsed roofs of businesses. 5 years ago, 4 days after the Camp Fire, I stood right here and I couldn't believe my eyes at the utter devastation.
I've always thought when I hear reporters showing devastation from wildfires like this and calling it a war zone, sometimes perhaps that's overused. It's not. It looks like a war zone. This is what's left of Paradise Gardens Senior Living. That same land today is once again covered with housing for seniors, and Paradise Gardens is back. Just across the street, this Bushman Road lot sits empty, and yet looks very different than 5 years ago. So now I'm on Bushman Road, and behind me is what's left of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's a stunning sight to see, though I do want to tell you what these firefighters are doing here is they're lowering the flag on the flagpole here at the church because it's been badly damaged.
Turns out that 5 years later, the flagpole is still here. It's laying on the ground in the parking lot that is also still here. But the grounds where the church stood for decades, the gathering place of the faithful on Sundays, that's all gone. This is Sawmill Road, another place I visited on that Sunday afternoon.
This is the state of the homes here, just south of Billy Road on Sawmill. Okay, this is on the left side of the road as I walk away from Billy. Moments later, I inadvertently revealed to Tim and Jean Thomason, who were watching that night, that their home survived. It's the second one there on the left. 5 years later, the Thomasons, who had only lived in Paradise for a few years before the Camp Fire, say they are still grateful for their home, but
it's a good news, bad news situation. My baseline is I just crave being around people.
today the population of Paradise is less than 1/4 what it was before the Camp Fire.
What keeps us here? It's convenient. What do you think, Jean, for work?
Oh, for me, it's very convenient, and I don't have to live in the crowded conditions and overpriced comparison-wise to property up here.
But is that enough to enjoy life in the years to come, considering most of their neighbors are gone and are never coming back?
It's a mixed bag. It's you know, it's not I'm living out, oh, this is just wonderful, we love it, everything's fine. Everything isn't fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to pack up and move? No, probably not, because we like this and we like that, so it's a...
Plus we're close to family.
Alan, in preparing this story, what else struck you that maybe you didn't have time to include?
Yeah, and something I didn't expect really is the missing trees. That struck me a lot. I always associated Paradise with all those thousands of trees, and now many thousands of trees, of course, have since been removed, and it's very evident there today.
That's right, but things are changing, and Action News Now reporter Lauren Cooper will have more on that coming up soon. Now, the fire brought small silver linings. Before 2018, Paradise was the largest city west of the Mississippi with no public sewer system. The reduced population size qualified the town for grant funding for an 18-mile pipeline from Paradise to Chico. Construction starts next summer.
Well, the entire Paradise Town Council was left homeless by the campfire, and yet they stayed on to help find a path toward recovery.
That's right. Action News Now anchor Linda Watkins-Bennett joins us. So, Linda, are many of those local leaders still in Paradise?
As a matter of fact, 4 of the 5 town council members at the time have rebuilt and are now back living on the ridge. Among them, former councilwoman Melissa Schuster and her husband, who are now focused on a new path for the future. Behind me, you see their property before the campfire and right afterward. The chimney of the outdoor pavilion is one of the reminders of the former Chapelle de l'Artiste, the home of Melissa Schuster and Cliff Jacobson. Almost all of their buildings burned in the fire, and 1,000 trees are gone. But somehow a 50-year-old one-room chapel survived.
We stood on the steps of the chapel that survived, and we looked around and we said, it's enough. It's enough. We can work with this.
They only recently moved into their newly rebuilt home after living in an RV for 4.5 years. As a town leader in the aftermath of the fire, Schuster says it was hard to not have all the answers.
I did my best to keep a positive outlook because the things that were gone were gone, and no amount of lamenting or grieving was going to bring those things back. And there was nothing more to do except to move forward.
Growing back differently is what happened, the town itself and Chapelle. One new concept sprang from an Explore Butte County Zoom meeting.
And I thought, glamping tents. Now that would be a great bridge back to my B&B and Airbnb business that was going strong before the fire.
Just down the hill, another new venture with their son, Burnt Barn Distillery. More for the next generation than themselves. They plan to produce bourbon, gin, vodka, and rum with a tasting room and more.
I knew how much a business like that would be a boon to Paradise in terms of tourism. Tourists become residents, and certainly the revenue that's generated from a tourist attraction like that.
As a campfire survivor, Schuster has said from the beginning, the fire is what happened, the story is in our recovery. Rebuilding with an eye on fire safety, salvaging small pieces of the past, like repurposing the old sidewalk to a former donkey barn, where Donkey Chateau now stands. Proud of what they and the town have accomplished.
I remember people saying, 5 years, 500 people, or 5 years, 5,000 people. Here we are coming up on 5 years, and we're almost 10,000 people. We figure stuff out. We get it done.
Also on the property, one of my favorite things, a thriving koi pond. After the fire, they helped rescue fish from ponds across the ridge. They were also called into action during the bear fire. The pond, now home to between 300 and 500 koi and other fish, along with many rescued turtles.
Pretty cool to see. Well, laying down new roots.
You know, you do it for different reasons, either for food or shade, screening, wind blocks.
What's rising up in the once charred forest when we come back? What used to be lush forest before the campfire is barely recognizable now.
But that's changing. Action News Now reporter Lauren Cooper shows us how.
Blackened trees, ground stumps, and skeletons of a once flourishing forest continues to be a painful reminder to survivors of the Camp Fire. You can very clearly see the environmental impact the Camp Fire has had on the forest. In this scene behind me, you can see just above all that red dirt, those dead trees still standing in a lot of empty space, and just below it, that's how the forest used to look. And while recovery can take years, Executive Director for the Butte County Fire Safe Council, Taylor Nielsen, says it's become a new focus.
Any opportunity that we get for replanting or fostering natural regrowth is important because it definitely is a huge part of Paradise's culture. We noticed a lot of naturally regenerating black oaks, and so we focused on replanting a lot of the conifers that were lost because we saw a really high mortality rate there.
Nielsen says the group replanted 194 acres of Douglas firs, ponderosa pines, and some incense cedars.
Forest health across the state is a lot of what we all rely on. A lot of people don't realize that, down in the cities, the water that comes to those cities comes from the forest. And so without healthy forests, then a lot of our natural resources are lost.
One man made it part of his recovery journey to replant all the trees he lost in the Camp Fire.
What do you like about planting trees?
Well, you get to watch them grow.
Camp Fire survivor Bert Rodriguez tells me since the fire, he's planted over 100 trees with about 70 different species.
Apples and mandarins, pears, I have grapes and berries, passion fruit, just all kinds. But you do it for different reasons, either for food or shade, screening, wind blocks.
Rodriguez says he's been a small-scale landscaper since 1984. And while he's grown a lot of trees, they haven't made up for the ones he's lost.
Well, of course, I enjoyed them because they were shady and all that and beautiful. I mean, I had, over 100-year oaks and ponderosa pines and redwoods, and, to just see everything, you have to take it out.
Did you feel sad having to do that?
Of course I did. There were better days than others. Like, wow, this was where I sat and had coffee and donuts, and those were really tough.
Rodriguez says now he and his trees are flourishing. Now, some people I spoke with were very adamant that they do not want to see more trees replanted in the burn scar, saying that forest density is one of the reasons why the Camp Fire was so destructive. But Nielsen says forest health is very important for the quality of life that it gives to you and me. Trees can provide food, clean water, shelter, shade, breathable air, and on top of all of that, they also have a lot of mental health benefits by simply being around them. Which is why Butte County Fire Safe Council has added fire recovery alongside fire prevention. I'm Lauren Cooper reporting in Paradise with Action News Now. Coverage you can count on.
The Butte Resource Conservation District has also replanted about 200 acres of native trees in the Camp Fire burn scar and given away 12,000 trees to landowners in the area.
There are now more than 5,000 customers hooked up to water through the Paradise Irrigation District, and the district has about 9,300 clean water connections ready to go. Before the fire, PID had more than 10,000 connections, so they're about halfway back. The Bobcats are back at it. We take you to the field for the triumphant recovery. Straight ahead.
Legendary former Paradise High School football coach Rick Prinz and two players from his 2018 team spoke with us about their lives 5 years after the fire.
And sports director Josh Middleman joins us now. So, Josh, how are they doing now?
Guys, all things considered, they're doing pretty good. Of course, thankful to be alive and forever altered from what happened 5 years ago today.
When Lucas Brown on the left and Daniel Betancourt woke up for school the day of the Camp Fire, they were filled with joy over playing for head coach Rick Prinz in a playoff game the next day against Red Bluff. Very soon, however, they were just hoping to remain alive.
Our house did burn down during the fire, and everyone we know did, but as long as the family got out and everyone we know got out safely, that's all that really matters. And that's what we learned in the end, is material items are just items, you know what I mean? Life is precious and valuable.
Betancourt escaped the fire with his family via a dirt road from Magalia to Forest Ranch to 32.
Our home had smoke damage, and we were living in an apartment with 14 people for about 4 months before we moved back home. But we were fortunate enough to be able to even get an apartment, and that's actually where my cousins ended up staying. Even after we moved back home, they kept the apartment and were able to have housing, but a lot of people didn't have that opportunity.
As for that playoff game against Red Bluff, it was originally postponed, not canceled.
Saturday they were talking about playing it, and I was waiting for someone else to make the decision that we weren't going to play it, and finally I just said, I can't ask these guys to play. They're everywhere in California, and the coaches have lost their homes. Everybody but two coaches lost their homes, and they're scrambling around looking for a place to live. They have kids, they have all kinds of stuff, and so that's when we called the season. That's what Danny's talking about, that message on Huddle.
Huddle being the app through which Coach Prinz communicated to his team that there would be no playoff game. The season was over.
I remember sitting in the mall with my family, and I teared up reading that message. Like the love that everyone has had for football growing up here, playing all those years. I remember growing up looking at the varsity team being like, hey, one day I want to play in the playoffs. And those seniors that year never got the opportunity, and it was really rough on a lot of them and rough on all of us a little bit.
These days, Betancourt and Brown help coach Paradise's JV team with the now retired Rick Prinz, often around as well. Betancourt is a student at Butte College and soon headed to Chico State. Brown, in addition to coaching, works at a local candy shop. All three forever changed by what happened November 8th, 2018.
I would say family's always been important to me, but when we all got out safe and we knew it, I could have cared less about any material possession. That was the only thought, was we all made it. And when every player made it, every player, not one student in our school district didn't make it. When that happened and we started talking on our Huddle message board to each other about how our day went and who's safe, have you heard from this guy, have you heard from that guy? I mean, that's all that was important. And I think for me it'd be, not take those things for granted.
Hearing each player's story and Coach Rick Prinz's story, just incredible. Coach Prinz suggested I read the book about him and the team, the 2019 team that made that deep playoff run. I've got it, and it is a terrific book.
Well, if you missed any part of this special, you can rewatch it anytime on our Action News Now homepage.
Thank you for being with us for this celebration of recovery and hope for an even brighter future.